Welcome back to Round the Cauldron, where we talk theology, philosophy, and everyday life as a modern witch. Today's podcast episode is an interview with M.A. Phillips, author of River Magic and Hearth Magic that was recently released on February 2nd. The Rituals of Rock Bay series is a magical realism series written by a modern druid. If you're ready to hop into the interview, grab some coffee, pull up a seat, and join me round the cauldron. So thank you so much for joining me today. I have M.A. Phillips on the show, who is the author of the books that I keep talking about. She is the author of the Rituals of Rock Bay series. So thank you so much for being here today with me. Will you go ahead and give an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm M.A. Phillips. I am an author, which has always been my dream. And now I can say that I'm an author. and I'm a practicing druid and polytheist. And I live in upstate New York by the Canadian border, basically in the Thousand Islands region.
Awesome. So how long have you been a practicing druid?
Oh, goodness. I actually just sat down and figured this out because I had another interview with somebody who was asking me, and I kept saying, it's been over a decade, but it's been like 17, 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's been longer than you thought.
Yeah. Time flies. So I started in college. I looked into various forms of Wicca and eclectic paganism and eventually found my way to Druidry. What really got me into ADF or Anriach Fen Druidry was because of proximity to a grove. I at the time was living in Utica, New York, and there happened to be an established grove in Syracuse. And unfortunately, that grove is no longer there. But thank goodness, it was just a wonderful resource. And I learned so much. It was a safe, healthy environment. I never felt, it's a very open, family-friendly sort of experience. Very, for lack of a better word, tribal, So, and my husband at the time, who was my boyfriend, would go with me, and they were just very welcoming. Hospitality is an important value to druids and anyone who follows an Irish-inspired spirituality. So, yeah, it got me on my way, and I felt like I had come home. And I've been practicing ever since.
That is such a sentiment that echoes in a lot of pagan communities. Like, I came home.
Yeah.
I can relate to that immensely.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the series that you're writing? Because it's still in progress, right?
It is, yes. I'm actually working on the first round of revisions on book 3 with my editors. My books are published through Shadow Spark Publishing. It's a small press. They're mostly based in Texas, but they have authors all over the world at this point, mostly US and Europe. But I mean, it's pretty amazing. So the Rituals of Rock Bay starts with River Magic, and it's a journey. It's the character's journey into paganism and finding their identities, and mostly their spiritual identities, really, and how they interact with each other, their spiritual community, and their families and friends. There are lots of pagan characters in the books. The main characters are pagans, specifically druids. I went with a write what you know for my first series, but there are other kinds of pagans sprinkled in, and there are lots of other people. There's some atheists and agnostics and various types of Christian characters. So they have to navigate these relationships. The Rituals of Rock Bay takes place in upstate New York, where I live, along the very real St. Lawrence River in a fictional town called Rock Bay. And so it's a contemporary story. That's why I call it magical realism. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like an urban fantasy. It's not a fantasy in another world. The characters are based in our reality, and they are practicing spiritual practices that are in existence. So these characters are doing things that other pagans should recognize. I don't come right out and say that the druid characters are an ADF or Anriakfen, but anyone who's in that tradition should recognize it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm probably rambling.
No, you're fine. I love when people talk about things that they're really passionate about, and and reading your book. So if for any listeners that don't know, I've already read the first book. I think I'm like halfway through the second one.
Oh, wow.
I think I've hit the halfway mark. Actually it's what I was doing before we sat down to read to have a chat with each other.
That's awesome. Thank you so
Um
much for reading.
yeah, well, I love that your stories aren't fantasy.
Hmm.
So I can remember looking for books with like me in them, right?
Hmm.
As a pagan that wasn't fantasy, that didn't have like it wasn't Harry Potter, you know,
Exactly.
with the waving of the wands and the fantastical elements. I have it written down here. So it's like you write reality with a touch of flair.
Thank you. I like that.
Yeah, that's sort of the only way that I could figure out how to describe it. Um, because it's it's a modern story of stuff that is practiced in everyday life.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important for us to be able to find books like that, because you can find books like that with almost any other topic. But when
For
it
sure.
comes to things like druidry and magic and spirituality, it's often very fantastical, very mythical and fantasy based. So I really like that your books are written like this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm finding more and more that there are lots of people who say the same thing. Like part of why I got published, like the publishing journey is way more intense than people who aren't seeking publication ever realize. When I was younger,
Hmm.
I grew up with reading Rainbow, and I
Yes.
watched this one episode about how to publish a book, and they make it look so simple.
Right? Like, oh, just write the thing and then submit it, and ta-da, you're published.
Yeah, but it's not. It's for anybody that tries to go a traditional route, it is a massive slog through querying and hoping to find an agent or hoping that a publishing house will accept you. And I kept getting very similar responses. Um, I like it. It's not for us, or, it's just not the right time for this, or, I hope you keep writing, but, you know, so
Hmm.
it, it was really discouraging, but I kept going. You have to persevere. And I decided to try smaller houses. And I'm so glad I did. And I found Shadow Spark um, opening to queries. Figured, well, why not? And lo and behold, they're not active pagans anymore, but the founders are from the pagan community. One of their mothers ran a coven, and they're very familiar with all of this. And that's what they said. It was like, wow, where has this been? Even though they don't practice anymore, they're still drawn to that, and they have friends in that community, and it's still very
Hmm.
meaningful to them as part of their identity. And just the scene with the potluck, they always kept going back to that. They loved that. That was
Yeah.
authentic to them. I was like, wow, I found my niche then. So I'm so glad
Yeah.
it's resonating with people.
So, what was your inspiration for this story? Do you have a specific, like you had a thought and just ran with it, or like going back to what you said earlier, you write what you know?
Hmm. So, oh goodness, this has been a journey. um, I mentioned that I always wanted to be a published author. I've been writing since I was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have my mother write the stories. I would dictate to her. um, and I used to want to be a fantasy author, like really badly.
Mm-hmm.
I still have my first full novel that I wrote when I was like 12 or 13 kicking around somewhere, and it's not very good. But then life happened, and I went to college and, got married and went to grad school and had my daughter. And I put creative writing on a back burner, and I kept writing things. I was writing for college and writing for my blog. And I mentioned I'm in Arnriach Fen, and they have various study programs. So I was
Mm-hmm.
writing a lot of nonfiction and reflection pieces. So I kept my writing skills. I didn't let them get rusty.
Mm-hmm.
But I missed writing fiction and for self-expression, for that mode of self-expression. So I started. I don't know. I had all these ideas, and I tried some uh, fantasy. Like, originally, Lacey was going to get sucked into the fairy realm, and it never felt right.
Mm-hmm.
So originally it was going to be some sort of supernatural romance, and with massive ecological warfare and like all this stuff. And it's like, wow, this is just too big.
Yeah,
And
that's very big.
it is. And I don't know, the world building, and just at the time I was attempting to take what I was learning about the Irish deities, the Tuatha, and incorporate this. And it's like, wow, this is just way too big. And I'm not an expert, and I'm going to mess something up. And I don't want to offend Irish people. That's
Mm-hmm.
a big deal to me. So I kind of took a step back. Um, and it was around this time that I had my daughter, and I started reading Alice Hoffman. I don't really know much about her individual spirituality, but you know, she wrote Practical Magic, and that was a huge story, huge movie for many of us. I first saw the movie
Yes.
when I was younger, but then I started reading her books and realized that magical realism is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that inspired me. And so I started revisiting the character of Lacey and thinking about her differently. And, well, what would it be like if she was just, a regular druid doing regular druid things and existing in our society? So
Yeah.
it transformed in my mind. And it was always supposed to be, someone who's a dreamer and coming to terms with the unseen world, and a romance. It transformed over the years, and I'm so glad it did. And I started to write what I knew and went about it as well, instead of trying to force the Tuatha into a story about this massive thing going on that just, it was way too big for me. It's like,
Yeah.
let me write about someone like me who is exploring Irish spirituality but lives in America and has to navigate all of this. And it kind of allows for her to be imperfect but also trying, you know? And it worked out. So
Yeah.
that's in a nutshell.
Well, I like where it's going. I'm really glad that you chose the direction that you did, because even hearing you talk about where it was originally, I can even tell like doesn't feel authentic for you.
Yeah,
Does that
it
sound
definitely.
right?
Yeah. I'm so glad I recognized that before I got too deep into it, because yeah,
Yeah, and I
that
mean, oh, even trying to understand the Tua Dedanan outside of trying to write about them is a big task on its own. I
yes.
couldn't imagine trying to squeeze them into a book.
Yes, it's never ending.
No.
Honestly, I'm forever a student. I say I'm a practicing druid. I'm not an expert by any means, And
Oh, for
I really
sure.
hope your listeners understand that. Like, I am not an expert by any means. And
Yeah.
I highly encourage anyone interested in that to seek authentic Irish voices, or if you're interested in the Scottish tradition, seek Scottish authors. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't claim expert status here ever.
Yes.
So, how much of your own practice informs what you write? Because I know um, even in the second book that I've gone through so far,
Mhm.
there's poetry and devotions, and I know you work very closely with Bridget. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep. Yep. I do.
And
I
so
work.
does Lacey.
Yeah.
So, how much of your practice informs what you write in that sense?
Well, so again, going back to this process of giving my story shape and finding exactly what it is I want to say and my message. Um, as I was figuring out what Lacey's journey would be, I work with Brisha, and I'm constantly, making offerings and praying to her. And every night I do a devotional where I give offerings of thanks for her inspiration.
Hmm.
And so incorporating Brisha into my story, it was natural. It became a devotional as well.
Hmm.
And you see it happening again in the second book, and it's there in the third book. So just creating the story, it's it's for her too. So a lot of what you see Lacey doing mirrors some of what I do. And
Hmm.
again, I'm writing what I know. Um, Perhaps someday I will write stories about other kinds of pagans, but that will require a lot of research and a lot of interviewing to be authentic.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
I have thought about writing books like that, but I'm like, I don't want to get anything wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna stick with the shadow work. I know that.
That's awesome. Yeah, we need things for that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna insert like a what do you call it? An audio clip here of like a round of applause because in reading, I mean, and I even noticed it in the first book, but I'm seeing it more in the second book. Your books are extremely inclusive and they contain a variety of characters of many different gender identities and sexualities and colors. So I just wanted to say thank you for that
Oh,
because I don't
you're
see
welcome.
very often.
Thank you. I'm trying, and I'm so often worried that I'm going to fail, but I do want to represent the diverse community that we have.
Hmm.
And I say this, of course, acknowledging the fact that the leads are white characters.
Right.
They are at least presenting heterosexual white characters. Um, uh, Anthony is actually bisexual, but I haven't gone into that. But just FYI, he is. Um, yeah, but like Lydia and Jan,
Hmm.
I so want to do something. I want to give them a novel, and their story keeps kind of creeping into the other books. And then when I have to edit and revise, those subplots often get whittled down, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
but
I am on
they're,
Team and Lydia. I will read it.
but for sure, that's the sort of book that's going to take a lot of time, because I would
Hmm.
need diverse beta readers and sensitivity readers. Like Lydia's bi, and Jan's a
Hmm.
lesbian, and Jan is Black, and it would have to be done right
Hmm.
if I ever do that at all. But I did want them there, and
Yeah.
there's some trans characters, and gender fluid characters. And I apologize to anyone if I'm not using the words correctly, but I really just wanted to show a slice of how diverse the pagan community is.
Right. Well, I appreciate it as someone who is not heterosexual. I mean, I am still a white cisgendered woman, but you don't often see that in writing like this. And then when you do, it's either presented as, just some random thing that's inserted into the story just to garner, I don't know, just to say that it's there, or it's the focus of the story, right? I haven't seen an in between. So I loved that it's just like, okay, we're going through Lacey's story. Oh, here's Lacey's best friend and her girlfriend. Okay, we're going to continue the story. And it's a normal part of the progression of all of the characters and their development. And it's not made to feel like it's out of place, because it's just a normal part of the experience.
Yes. It's not my place to do any story where their race or their gender orientation or sexuality is the focus. I have to step aside and allow those writers to do that if they want to, but I definitely don't want to misrepresent their voices. So.
Right.
But thank you. I'm glad that comes across well.
It did for me. Now I can't, not claiming expert status on anything, but I can say that I did appreciate that, and how well it was written into it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I do have to say that I'm loving the character development that I'm seeing in book 2.
Yay!
It is, I think we talked a little bit after I first got it and I started reading it, and you told me that you hoped I liked it. And I was like, I'm not even finished with chapter 1. And I keep saying, what? And oh my God. And that's continued. It's developed in such a way that feels natural, but also has me rooting for characters that I didn't want to root for in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, my editors were amazing. We had I had a lot of revisions to do in this book. And they were just amazing. And it's, they never insert their voices into anything. They're not writing it for me, but they gave me a lot of feedback, and I'm so glad they did. It was kind of an arduous month or so of just crazy revisions and rewrites. And then in the end, I'm extremely happy with how it turned out.
So I'm loving it so far too.
Yay.
And you said that you're in the process of the first round of revisions for book 3?
Yes.
Do we have a title yet?
Yes.
Oh, I'm excited.
So
you don't have to say.
I can give you the scoop.
Okay.
The scoop. So this book is called Forest Magic.
Forest Magic?
Forest Magic. I haven't released that anywhere else yet.
Oh.
Forest Magic. Yeah, the rapid release schedule has been a bit crazy. So my focus has been on the editing and the revisions at this point, and I realize I haven't shared the title anywhere. So
well, you heard it here first, folks.
Forest Magic. Yeah, so we've had river magic with a lot of focus on water, hearth magic with fire, and finally forest magic there's going to be a lot of action in the woods.
Ooh. Now I noticed there's 3, and you said water and fire and earth.
Yep.
Would it happen to be a play on sea and sky?
Yes. Yeah. It's very much.
Or you just happen?
Well, when I was querying river magic, the language I used is very standard when querying is standalone with series potential. And Shadow Spark very much wanted to expand it. They saw the potential, and I had already started Hearth Magic and had kind of a rough idea for book 3 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I am awful with coming up with titles, so they usually come like in the middle or towards the end, usually towards the end. But
Mm-hmm.
with book 3, it was like I kind of knew what I wanted to do, and forest magic. So yeah, it's very much a tribute to the 3 realms and the 3 hollows
Mm-hmm.
of Druidry and Irish spirituality: the fire, the well, the tree, the land, the sea, the sky, or in this
Yeah.
case up here, the river.
Yeah.
But yeah, book 3 will mostly tie up Lacey and Kian's story for the most part, and I I do want to eventually do more in Rock Bay, but the focus will be different characters, I think. I'm not
That's
saying
so
I would never write
exciting.
about Lacey and Kian again. They would definitely still be around.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my feeling at this point in time.
Ooh. Oh, I'm excited.
Yay.
Do you have any like what was your inspiration for these characters? Because I love when you share your character art
Yeah,
because
I'm a
it's
bunny. She's amazing.
we'll have to leave the link for them in the description and in the show
Yes.
notes. Um yeah, did you have any inspiration for these characters or was it just like they fell in your lap?
They develop over time. I mean, yeah, they happen over time. I knew that I wanted Lacey to be a dreamer and but be hesitant. And that was a
Mhm.
big part of her flaw. Um Kian, I knew I wanted him to be a shy, sensitive young man.
Mhm.
Um but a lot of them kind of just took shape through trial and error over time. Um I'm a lot more thoughtful about it now. Like River Magic took me several years to write as I kind of built the world and the characters. Even though it
Mhm.
takes place here, like it's the characters that took me a lot of time in the plot. But now I'm much more thoughtful. I really think about what do I want these characters to be like, if they're going to be a foil for anybody, or
Mhm.
how I want their development to be. But with the initial characters in River Magic, it was just very much like discovery as I went along.
Mhm. That's it's so interesting to hear the way other people talk about writing. I love it. And I love
Yeah.
the character art that you share too cuz I like to form like an image of the characters in my head first, but
Hmm.
I also like to see what you imagine the characters to look like.
Yeah.
And they very much align. So, I
Yeah. I
I
think
like that.
sharing character art, it helps me find a balance between exactly what you described. The covers, it was very important to me that they were little on the abstract side.
Mhm.
And my cover artists, Jess and Chad Moon, were amazing about doing that and
Mhm.
capturing the the energy of the story, really. But then I
Mhm.
also have this wonderful character art for people who need it, or yeah, just want to see how I envision them. And I'm a Bunny is just so good to work with. She gives me rough sketches and we talk back and forth and she brings them to life. And when I finally see them, it's like, oh my gosh, she read my mind.
Yeah. Do you have a tentative date for book 3 to come out? I know you said it's on like a quick release. I
Yes.
don't remember what you called it.
Yeah, rapid release. A lot
There you
of
go.
smaller presses like to do that. It's supposed to come out Bieltina, so around February 1st. Or not February 1st, May 1st.
Oh, so I don't have to wait that long?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So um this time last year I was still querying for River Magic, and I wouldn't submit to Shadow Spark until I think April. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um But I was doing a lot of practical work, the writing and the revisions, and, taking into account what um, the very polite rejection said, and, any critiques, any helpful suggestions. So I was doing that work, but I was also doing a lot of magical work and making offerings to Brige, and, praying just for continued inspiration and perseverance to do this. And every month I did a moon working for the same thing, for that, just with the waxing moon, the increase to bring my dreams to fruition. And then it's kind of become something I laugh about with other people now. Like, be careful what you wish for. Like, it's an awesome thing. And I'm not saying like I regret anything. I don't. It's been an amazing ride. But whoa, you pray to Brige for publishing, and then suddenly I'm publishing 3 books on a very tight, rapid deadline. And it's like, whoa, this whole year has just been an intense year of growth. I listened to that episode where you interviewed the gentleman, the blacksmith, about Brige and how she's the blacksmith, and she puts you on that anvil and she shapes you. And that's precisely what happened. She's like, okay, you want to be an author? Well, let's go. I got my hammer ready.
Right? Oh my goodness.
But it's been good. It's a lot of work, but very good work. And I don't regret a thing.
That is so amazing. And it's funny that you talk about that episode, because you are the author that I was talking about.
I had a feeling.
So it's good that we got a chance to talk. And you also speak of being put on the anvil, and as Chris said, you can't shape steel without hitting it with a hammer.
Exactly. Exactly. And my editors, they are the hammers.
Yeah.
They're very kind and understanding, but they have pushed me for all the best reasons. And obviously, people like it.
Yeah.
It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but a lot of people seem to like it. So yay.
Well, I like it. And I encourage everybody that is listening that enjoys this type of story that is reality based to check out the books as well. I actually gave the first book away in my giveaway for hitting 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So maybe when book 3 comes out, I'll snag a signed copy from you and give it away again.
That would be awesome. I would be happy to do that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with being a modern pagan, being a druid, writing books about modern druids, because I feel like everybody needs to read them. We need more of our reality-based representation in books and media like that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You want to give a shout out of where people can find you online? I'll be sure to leave all the links in the description and in the show notes too.
Sure. So you can find a lot of my work on my website. My blog is still up and running, and it's part of it, www.ditsydruid.com. Yeah, I call myself the Ditsy Druid because I ramble and I'm very awkward when I talk in person. So I think that might have come out a little bit tonight. But
no. You're perfectly fine.
Thank you. My books, River Magic and Hearth Magic, are available to order on Shadow Spark Publishing. And the links are also on my website. I also have some short stories available. I was published in Hagstone, or Stone, Root and Bone, through Hagstone Publishing. They have since closed, unfortunately, but I'm going to be putting those short stories out for people to enjoy. And I also am very active on Twitter and Instagram, and my handle is Ditsy Druid again.
Perfect. Yeah, I think Michelle still has I think the volumes, oh my gosh, the magazines
Hmm.
from Hagstone Publishing are still available to purchase, I believe. I'll leave a link for
For
that in the description
yeah,
too.
for a limited time, the Etsy store is going to come down eventually. But I'm going to make
Yeah.
sure I already have permission to do what I need to do and share my stories as I want.
Cool. Again, I will leave all of the links in the description and in the show notes. Make sure that you check out the Rituals of Rock Bay series. Thanks again, Em, for coming on and speaking with us. And we'll talk to you all next time. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with M.A. Phillips and that you will consider checking out her books. A big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Your support keeps me inspired to keep doing what I'm doing. If you'd like to join me on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/roundthecauldron. I'll talk to you next time.